I want to welcome everyone to the Live Well Kalkaska Substance Free Coalition's Coffee with the Coalition Forum. This is an open and informal discussion focused on substance use disorders as well as related topics and concerns affecting the Kalkaska community and the broader Northern Michigan region. So I would like everybody to introduce themselves and any agencies that they might be with.
Hi, I'm Donna Norkley, and I'm a regional planning manager at District Health Department number 10.
Thank you. Linda?
Hi, my name is Linda Solom. I'm a prevention specialist with Up North Prevention, Grand Traverse County, an initiative of Catholic Human Services.
All right, thanks. Dr. McGrath?
Hi, Dave McGrath from Traverse City. I'm the medical director of the Northern Michigan Opioid Response Consortium.
Thanks. And Belinda?
My name is Belinda. I am a community member and a mother.
Thank you. And I'm Suzanne Prentice. I am the Live Well Kalkaska Substance Free Coalition Coordinator and Prevention Specialist for Kalkaska County through Catholic Human Services Up North Prevention. And this morning we're welcoming Ken Dail. Is that how you pronounce your last name?
Perfect.
Yep. Alliance Coordinator for the Michigan Youth Cannabis Action and Education Alliance, or MYCAEA, and MCBAP Certified Substance Abuse Prevention Consultant. Ken is a seasoned expert with 35 years of experience in the substance use disorder prevention field, and he's presenting on the dangers of youth cannabis use today. Go ahead, take it away, Ken.
I'm going to start sharing my slides. We're going to talk a little bit about MYCAEA itself. It's our mission. We're a statewide alliance of like-minded people who are just trying to prevent non-medical underage cannabis use. To your body and your brain, cannabis is cannabis. It doesn't matter if you're using it for medical reasons, non-medical reasons, so-called recreational reasons, stress relief, PTSD, ADHD, any of the alphabet soup of things that people struggle with. Cannabis is going to affect you in certain ways. We focus on non-medical underage cannabis use because we don't have the time or the energy to argue with people who are using it as some version of a medical, a medical treatment. We just try to stick to here's what it does to young people and kind of go from there. So again, I don't think it affects people differently whether they're using it for medical reasons or non-medical reasons. I think the impact is the same on the issues that we're going to talk about. But again, our focus really is on kind of the non-medical use of it. We understand that youth norms are derived from adult norms. Access is related to adult access, and youth use is related to adult use. Therefore, we address adult behaviors, but our end goal is preventing cannabis use among young people. Trying to convince a young person because of the kind of the adolescent brain development and where they are socially, where they are, again, as far as brain development and how they make decisions, trying to convince them to do healthy things by giving them more information is difficult at best. However, trying to teach an adult the same thing, because as adults, we tend to make our decisions based on information and experience and things like risk and reward. We spend a lot of time talking to adults about what cannabis is doing to young people in hopes that adults will create a community and an environment that's going to reduce the chances of a young person using. So our goal is to support youth and adults in their decision to not use. We understand to stigmatize, demonize, or otherwise pass judgments on our friends. It's just counterproductive. It doesn't work. People are going to make choices based on how they want to behave and how they want to feel. And we're not in a position to say you're wrong or you're dumb or none of that really works. Instead, what we want to do is just share the information and share the risks of what cannabis does to people, specifically to young people, and hope that most adults are in a good enough space that they don't want to see young people get harmed either. And in our experience, this approach has worked, not perfect, but pretty good. We're made up of coalitions, educators, different organizations and agencies, substance misuse prevention agencies, and concerned citizens. So we're a little bit of this and a little bit of that. We have a lot of folks on board that are interested in this. Here's some of the things that we do: assessing the landscape, educating and counter messaging. That's really the education, probably is the biggest piece of what I've been doing lately. Policies promoting health and wellness, environmental change, and then strengthening one another. We have about 130 people on our steering committee. We have about 25 or 30 that typically attend our meetings. And one of our goals is to make sure that if you attend one of our meetings, you get something out of it. Whether it's moral support or a pat on the back or information from another coalition that's doing something similar, or whatever the case might be. Our goal is to strengthen one another and make sure that we're all kind of pulling in the same direction in the same boat. This is who supports us: Prevention Network, the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. We are one of the grants that is on the chopping block, the Partnership for Success grant, which is the one that the state of Michigan has, MDHHS. We're a subrecipient, and that is one of the grants that may be eliminated with this upcoming budget cycle. So we'll see where we are October 1st. Our hope is we'll still be kicking with or without funds, but that's who funds us. We don't accept any funds from the industry or any of the trade groups. We're not opposed to if the state of Michigan were to say, hey, we have cannabis tax money that we have to use, we want to support MYCAEA. We would see that as an appropriate use of those funds. But if a trade group or an individual retailer or grower were to come to us and say, hey, do you want 100 grand? We would say thanks, but no thanks. Because we kind of feel like businesses exist to make money and nonprofits exist to save the world. And those two goals are not always consistent with one another. So we would rather save the world broke than have some conflicting agendas and be funded at the levels that we think we could be more effective. So we will not take industry funds. This is just in case I say something outrageous, because I typically do. The views, opinions, and content expressed in this presentation do not necessarily reflect the views, opinions, or policies of Prevention Network, the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, or our hosts today. So if I say something that you don't like, it's my fault, not the people who invited us, and certainly not our funders. This is just what we're going to talk about today. Real quick, a word about words, some different ways to talk about the plan itself. Marijuana and cannabis are the two terms that are most typically used. We choose the word cannabis. Marijuana with an H is actually how it is spelled in the state laws and the Michigan laws. So you'll see that sometimes. And that's not a mistype or a misspelling. That's just another version or variation of the word. If you really want an interesting study sometime, just Google marijuana and racism. Back in the 40s and 50s, 1940s, 1950s, marijuana, the word itself and how enforcement was handled in the United States was very race-based, and it was a very racist system that was set up at the time to punish immigrants and brown and black people. So the word marijuana has a lot of baggage for some groups, for others not so much. But because we work statewide, in some cases regionally and even nationally, we just choose to use the word cannabis. We understand that cannabis is not as accurate botanically, or if you're a person who works with cannabis all the time. But for the populations that we work with, everybody pretty much understands. If I say cannabis, we're talking about joints, we're talking about stuff that you stick in a pipe, we're talking about dabs and oils and glass and shatter and all of its different versions where people somehow find a way to ingest it. This includes edibles, it includes the oils, the tinctures, et cetera, et cetera. So we usually talk about cannabis. Quite often we hear people talk about the local dispensary. And in the state of Michigan, a dispensary is a place that either dispenses medicine or medical services, which is a hospital or pharmacy, where you buy weed because you have a broken toe or you have ADHD or you have post-traumatic stress or you have the whole variety of reasons people choose to use it in that way. None of that is medicine. Medicine is something a doctor kind of ferrets out in a prescribed way. In other words, this much over this amount of time, this many grams, this many milliliters, this whatever the dose is. And when it comes to medical cannabis here in the state of Michigan, you get a card that says, hey, weed might help whatever it is that's bugging you. So you go to your local medical cannabis retailer and say, hey, I need weed. And the bud tender, who may or may not have any training, any medical training, probably not, but the bud tender is the one that's going to determine the dosage for you, and they're going to determine the frequency, right? And they're going to determine the route of administration. Do you need an edible? Do you need a joint? Do you need this? Do you need that? That's not medicine. Okay. That's medicine in zero way, shape, or form. So we don't talk about the stores and use the term dispensary, because again, those are hospitals. Those are health centers. Those are ready meds and they're pharmacies. So dispensaries are places where medicine is dispersed. We don't have that in terms of the medical industry or the cannabis industry here in the state of Michigan. What we do have is cannabis retailers and medical cannabis retailers. And when you hear me talk about them, and hopefully most of the people through MYCAEA, that's the terminology that we use, is they're cannabis retailers. They're stores that sell cannabis. It's pretty simple. And then person first language. When we talk about people who use cannabis, that's what we talk about. People who use cannabis. It's not those people. It's not the people that do that. It's not them. It's not potheads. It's not burnouts. It's not et cetera, et cetera. Because again, I have loved ones that use cannabis. I have friends that use cannabis. I have people I'd take a bullet for that use cannabis. And if you want to call them a pothead, you and I are going to have issues. They're my friends. They also choose to use cannabis. I think it's an unhealthy thing for them to do. I think it's not a wise choice for them to do. But God knows there's things that I do that are unhealthy choices as well. So I'm not going to judge. I'm not going to put people down. I'm certainly not going to come up with derogatory terms to call people who choose to use cannabis. They're people that choose to use cannabis. And I hope that I can educate them to the point that they keep the cannabis away from young people. So any questions so far? All right, fantastic. Potency. We have not seen cannabis get weaker and weaker over the history in this country. If you look back to the 1970s and 1980s, I was born in 1970, so I'm 50 some years old. Anyway, when I was in high school, we were talking 1, 2, and 3% THC in cannabis, and THC is as most of you know, that's the active ingredient that causes the majority of the mind-altering behaviors that people want to experience when they use cannabis. In the 70s and 80s, we were talking 1 and 2%, maybe 3 or 4%. Today, it's in upwards of 20 to 30%. If you read High Times Magazine, or if you look at Weed Maps or some of the other pro-cannabis sources that are out there, they're promoting cannabis that's as high as 34 and 35%. And that's just the flower, right? The weed itself, the pre-rolls, the stuff that they roll into joints or stuff into pipes. This doesn't include the oils, the tinctures, the waxes, the shatters, the glass, all that stuff. This is just the flower. It can be as high as 30 to 35%. Now, 35% is the absolute top primo best stuff that's out there. The average that you can get at the cannabis retailers in Michigan is going to be around the kind of 15, 20, 22%, right in that ballpark. But again, compared to where we were at 3% when I was in high school, it's no wonder that people my age are saying cannabis is no big deal. We smoked bales of it when we were in high school, and most of us are just fine, right? We have jobs, we're paying our mortgages, we're in stable relationships, we're parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles and business owners and et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, we were smoking dandelions. I mean, it was very, very, very weak cannabis back then. If I personally were to try to smoke something today that's 20% THC, if I just smoked a joint, number one, I'd be coughing my lungs out because I haven't smoked anything in, oh my gosh, 35, 40 years, probably 35 years. But the THC level would knock me on my keister. I would not be functioning with that much THC in my system today. And we have young people that that's their starter weed. That's their base level. That's the first experiences they smoke a joint, and it's at that level. And then they have experiences with even stronger stuff. So when we talk potency, we're not talking apples and oranges here. We're talking apples and watermelons. I mean, it's such a completely different world. For a lot of people, one comparison that I've made that makes sense for some people is if you think about drinking a can of Bud Light in 1985, okay, just Bud Light beer, you drink a can, you might get a buzz, you might not, but you understand probably how much alcohol is in that can of Bud Light. Now take that today and make it straight Jack Daniels or straight vodka, 12 ounce can, you crack the top and you drink down the straight whatever, Jack Daniel's vodka, whatever you want to talk about. How would that impact you versus that Bud Light from 40 years ago? And that's really what we're talking about when it comes to concentrations. Is the weed today is just so much stronger. So that's the flower, the pre-rolls. Vape oils in the 1970s and 80s, we didn't have vape pens, right? We didn't know what they were. We didn't have dabbing rigs. We didn't have, a lot of the stuff that young people are using today for some of the stronger stuff. Today, some of the distillate oil and the resins are anywhere from 65 to 95% THC. 95% THC. I was talking to Suzanne briefly before everybody jumped on, and there are in other states, I've not heard of it here in Michigan, but in some other states on the coasts, they have a crystalline THC, which is about 99.9% pure THC. It looks like little sugar crystals or salt crystals, little teeny tiny amounts, but it's 99.9% pure THC. So yeah, compared to the 2 and 3% stuff, again, that was available in the 70s and 80s and early 90s, today's weed is not even in the same ballpark. 1980s.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So let's say I want to go out and smoke a joint, and I don't intend to, but I did in college. So what would I do? Take one hit off a joint and I'd be as high as I was in college, taking, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 hits. And I can't remember how I did it even, but
yeah.
What do people do? I mean, there's a potency thing, but then there's also the self-regulation thing. If somebody does a vape pen and takes one hit, they're going to be high. But I guess, what are you seeing in the field, or what are you hearing?
Right. If you, sorry, my video is freezing up here on me, so I'm going to turn it off for a minute. That's a great question. And that's what I've wondered too. So what happens if, I can remember, again, back in college, there might be a room with, 6 or 8 people in it. And in one session, they would sit around and smoke 2 or 3 joints, and everyone would be pretty high. So let's kind of multiply the THC by 10. Can 6 people sit around and smoke, 2, 3, 4 joints in one setting, in one session, and even function? And I think the answer is yes and no. A lot of it depends on who it is. It's just like kind of any other thing that's out there. If you've been smoking for a while, then your body is a little more used to that much THC. Now it's going to have a more profound impact on your level of impairment and some of these other negative consequences we're going to talk about. So yeah, you're going to be more messed up, but again, that's your baseline. So that's what you understand messed up as being. And you're going to be maybe more outwardly, you're going to look like you're functioning, but again, your impairment level is still so high, there's no way you should be driving. There's no way you should be thinking. You shouldn't be using a ballpoint pen. I mean, it just, like, you really should not be doing anything that requires any problem solving, any processing, any thinking. With the vape pens, what we're seeing a lot of is people will take one hit, and then half an hour later they'll take one hit, and then a half an hour later they'll take one hit. So it's not getting a ton of it on board all at once. It's more like getting that buzz on, but it lasting all day now, because I can just take a hit of my vape pen and then not hit it again for another half hour, 45 minutes. So the minute that my body says, oh, I'm starting to come down, oh, well, then I'm automatically going to go back for the vape pen. Even if it's not a conscious decision, as soon as your body says, hey, the THC level's going down, your body's going to respond, your brain's going to respond. So does that kind of help answer the question a little bit? Yeah. So this is 1980s cannabis. Again, it's good looking, it's functional. It'll get people the buzz that they're looking for. It doesn't look real dangerous. 2000s cannabis started getting a little beefier, a little stronger, a little more intimidating. And then today's cannabis, I always say it'll rip your arm off and beat you over the head with it. It's absolutely dangerous stuff. It's not, the high will still be there, but because there's so much THC in it, the negative impacts are just astounding. Adolescent mental health. So this is just some general information. Dopamine's a neurotransmitter. It's a chemical that transfers information between brain cells. it's believed that mental health challenges related to marijuana use are related to the drug's impact on dopamine. So dopamine is the message sender, and it's kind of the feel-good hormone or feel-good chemical. And if you have something messing with that, then it's going to have an impact on how you behave, right? And how you feel towards whatever that thing is that's messing with the dopamine levels. There's an established link between marijuana use and an increased risk of mental health disorders, schizophrenia, depression, anxiety in individuals who are genetically predisposed. And again, as I was saying earlier, a lot of researchers are now just right on the cusp of saying even people who weren't genetically predisposed, even people that literally have no mental illness in their body, cannabis is causing it. So you're going to hear that language start to come out more and more at conferences and at trainings. I don't have, again, my research isn't cutting edge in the last 2 weeks, but there's quite a bit that's come out in the last couple of months that says, yeah, it's a little more than people who were already struggling, making it worse. Now we're talking about a cause and effect. And again, the word marijuana, I use marijuana in these because that's what's in the article itself. If it were me just saying this, I'd use the word cannabis. A causal relationship between cannabis use and depression has been elusive. However, use is associated with a higher risk of severe mental health challenges adolescents experience. Really, there is absolutely no adolescent mental illness that cannabis makes better. We might hear teens say, oh, it makes my anxiety go away. So does alcohol. Yeah. I mean, so does punching somebody. So does a lot of the negative behaviors that people can sometimes exhibit that help alleviate their anxiety in the short term. Yeah, cannabis might do that for you. It might make it so that your adolescent or your anxiety is decreased. However, the bounce back effect, the boomerang effect is going to be massive. It makes anxiety worse in the long run. When the episodes happen, a person who's been using cannabis, things get worse for them. The bottom line, despite popular public opinion, cannabis use has not been proven to alleviate any adolescent mental health issues. In fact, it's been proven to make matters worse for any existing mental health challenges. There's not a single organization out there who has come out and said, oh, we fully endorse cannabis use for young people to treat this mental illness. There's just not a legitimate medical group out there. There might be some fringe groups, again, some cannabis trade groups or some things like that. But when it comes to physicians and doctors and researchers and mental health practitioners, there's not a single legitimate group that's come out and said, hey, cannabis helps teens' mental health in this way. Okay, so there might be a short-term impact, but or a short-term improvement. The long-term improvement is just ugly. One of the other things, I didn't put the slide in here, but even with like bipolar disorder, if you know how bipolar disorder usually shows itself, there's kind of waves. There's highs and then there's lows, and then there's highs and then there's lows. And sometimes there's just normalcy, normalcy, kind of that base level of I'm not feeling super happy. I'm not feeling super sad. I'm just feeling like it's a day. I'm just getting through today. With cannabis use, what's been shown is those manic episodes, whether they're highs or lows, get closer together. They get faster and the peaks get higher and the valleys get lower. So if you can imagine a person who's struggling with bipolar using cannabis and the THC is impacting their mental illness, all of a sudden their happiers are even happier and their sadders are even sadder. And those things are happening faster. So if that cycle used to happen every day or every couple of days or once a week or however it would kind of manifest itself, now it's happening on an almost hourly basis. And I don't know about you as an adult, I don't think I could handle that for very long. As an adolescent, it's got to be hell on wheels. So there's really no adolescent mental illness that cannabis has been shown to help in the long run, despite popular public opinion. And there's a lot of popular public opinions on it. Just a little bit about addiction before we kind of get into cannabis's impact on it. It's a treatable chronic medical disease involving complex interactions among brain circuits, genetics, the environment, and an individual's life experiences. People with addiction use substances or engage in behaviors that become compulsive and often continue despite harmful consequences. When you hear people talk about a substance use disorder, a cannabis use disorder, alcohol use disorder, that's what we're talking about. At one point, it was just simply all of it was termed addiction. The kind of the names, the nomenclature that we've used has evolved, but we're still talking about the same thing, right? We're talking about a behavior or a substance that's introduced that impacts a person in a way that they continue, sometimes in spite of even negative consequences. All right, my screen is deciding to freeze on me here, so it'll take a second. So the DSM-5, which is the reference that most people in the mental health field use to diagnose, it lists 11 criteria when it comes to a substance use disorder. That criteria is organized into 4 groupings that are used to diagnose it. 9 of the behaviors, okay, there's 11 criteria, and 9 of those criteria are behavioral. That means there's things that you can watch me do, or you can ask me a question, and my yes or no will tell you, am I exhibiting that behavior or not? 2 of them are physiological. Okay, so this isn't SUD, it's a diagnosable medical condition, not a concept. It's not a derogatory term. It's not a moral failure or a weakness or I just like to smoke weed, therefore I'm addicted. It really is a diagnosable, with some pretty solid criteria, a diagnosable medical condition. So there's still some people that are in the camp that, well, you can stop anytime, you just choose not to. Well, if you can, then you're not going to meet enough of the 11 criteria to be diagnosed with a substance use disorder. So that's just a kind of a little bit of background, because sometimes with groups, there's still, when you say cannabis and addiction or THC and addiction, they kind of go, well, number 1, you can stop anytime you want to. And number 2, cannabis isn't addictive anyway. According to the National Institute on Drug Abuse, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, about 9% of those who use cannabis will become addicted. That's a very general, very broad 9%. Of everybody who's used cannabis in the last 30 days, about 9% will eventually meet that criteria of having a cannabis use disorder or an addiction to cannabis, which really is pretty consistent with most substances, right? It's about the same with alcohol. About 1 out of 10 people who use alcohol will eventually have an alcohol use disorder, et cetera, et cetera. So cannabis isn't really that much different. Now, the rate increases to about 17% if you start using it in your teens. All right. So now we're talking about almost 2 out of 10. So it pretty much doubles if you start in your teens. And then it goes up to about 25 to 50% for daily users. Okay. So again, remember earlier I was talking about, David, in answer to your question, somebody that's hitting their vape pen every half an hour or every hour, they're probably not just doing that on Friday and Saturday, right? Chances are pretty good that they're doing that fairly consistently throughout the week, as long as they have a supply, which means they're daily users. Now, the other piece of that is, what if they're daily users and they're 15, 16, 17 years old? Well, now we're really talking about a perfect storm, right? So we're talking about 1 out of 4 or 1 out of 3 or 1 out of 2, every other person. There's 5 of us on the call right now, or there were maybe 6. There's 6 of us. That means somewhere between 2 and 3 of us, if we're daily users that started before 18 to 21 years old, 2 or 3 of us are going to end up with a cannabis use disorder. So that number is just, to me, it's just astounding, right? It goes from 1 out of 10 to 1 out of 2. So it, when we talk about addiction, it's real. I have a hard time having intelligent conversations with people that say cannabis is just not addictive. I'm not sure what I can say that's going to help them understand, number one, what addiction is, because usually people that'll say that really don't have a good grasp on what addiction is, right? They just think, again, it's a moral failure. You're just smoking weed too much. You just choose not to stop. No, we're talking about a diagnosable disease here. And then even if they understand that, the dynamics of what a substance use disorder even is, a lot of people are still of the mind that, well, THC just isn't that. Okay, let me take you back again to 1985. I had an older brother named Brian. He's gone now. He's died from his lifetime of substance use. He went in rehab the first time. I think he was in 9th grade. It might have been 10th grade. But first time he went into a program was 9th or 10th grade. They did the same assessment that they do, with everybody at that time, series of questions to look for those 11 criteria, et cetera, et cetera. And their conclusion was, yes, you have an alcohol use disorder, which back then they just said you're addicted to alcohol, but that's actually not your our primary concern with you. Our primary concern with you is your addiction to cannabis, to THC, to marijuana. 1985, 1986, right? He was addicted to cannabis when it was 2 or 3%. He smoked that much of the stuff. It's astounding. I mean, I laugh because I'm not sure what else to do. It's astounding that he could be addicted to it back then when it was 2, 3, 4% cannabis or THC. And now we're talking about stuff that could be as high as 90%. So is it addictive? Absolutely. It ranks right up there with oxygen when it comes to its addiction level. I mean, it's something that will, once it grabs you, it's simply not going to let go. Not everyone who uses will get addicted. Starting to use in your teens or daily users increase the chances. Other cannabis health considerations: hyperemesis syndrome. If you don't know what that is, that means you can't quit vomiting. People have literally died from this, dehydration, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of people, at one point there was, well, we need it for medicine for people who don't have any appetite because of cancer treatments, because of radiation and chemotherapy, and et cetera. They need to use cannabis in order to get their appetite back. And in some cases, that worked and it was successful. But now what we're seeing with high THC in people that are daily users is it's causing hyperemesis syndrome. Now, I don't know if any of y'all have ever had the stomach flu. That's about the most miserable 72 hours of your life, probably. I mean, most likely. You just can't stop throwing up. You're pretty sure at some point I just saw my shoes come out of my mouth. It's bad, right? With hyperemesis syndrome, that happens, and then you continue and continue and continue. And you can drink water, and you can do whatever you want. It's not going to stop until the THC has left your system. Right. So if you have a cannabis use disorder and the THC leaves your system, what happens? You start going into physical withdrawals, and you decide, oh, I want the headache to go away, so I'm going to smoke some more weed. And the THC enters your system again, and the hyperemesis syndrome comes back. It's a vicious circle for those that are suffering with it. And it's one of those that doesn't get talked about a lot. I mean, for one thing, it's not super common, but it's becoming more and more common. And number two, nobody likes to talk about vomit. I mean, nobody wants to talk about it, but it's there and it's very real. Pregnancy and nursing, there's still some associations out there that are saying, some edibles are going to help the milk flow a little bit better if you're nursing. That may or may not be true. I don't know. I'm not up on the science of that, but I can tell you the THC also crosses into the child's body, right, with breast milk. So yeah, no, not a great idea. Older adults in cannabis use, as we live longer. I mean, a dozen years ago, it was senior citizens and STDs because they live longer. And now we had a medication so that they could actually have sex well until they're dead. I mean, forever. Right. Well, now, again, as we live longer, we're seeing more and more older adults who are using cannabis to relax, who are using it for recreational purposes, for other medical purposes, whatever, social purposes. And it's causing some unique issues among senior citizens. Premature cardiovascular disease is starting to cause heart disease. The research is showing more and more that's going to be an issue. People that are driving under the influence. Some people will say, hey, I drive better when I'm stoned. You're also probably going to tell me that it's not addictive, right? And we know that's not true either. Most law enforcement, when I say what happens when somebody says I drive better when I'm stoned, they laugh and they say, yeah, we can tell, right? Because you're driving 45 in a 70 zone because you're being so hyper cautious. And because of the impact of the THC, you kind of have this tunnel vision thing that's going on with your driving. So of course you're driving 45 miles an hour on the expressway. Problem is that's a problem. So driving under the influence, and the fact that it's the THC is fat soluble, and that's a whole workshop all by itself. There's implications about how long it stays in your system, what your THC level is in your blood compared to what the THC level is in your brain, et cetera, et cetera. So the fact that THC is fat soluble kind of creates it's a whole new set of considerations. I'm going to wrap up in about 2 or 3 minutes here if we have any questions. But the role that we play in prevention, this is us, as adults. It doesn't matter whether you're a coalition leader, a physician, a mom, a realty agent. I don't care what you are. If you're an adult, you can play a role in helping young people make healthier decisions across the board. My concern is having to do with cannabis, but across the board, you can help young people make better decisions. What doesn't work? Hiding, sticking your head in the sand, hiding behind a tree, wringing your hands, acting like it's not a problem, or knowing it's a problem and doing nothing. That doesn't work, right? It just doesn't work, right? If our kids are doing something dangerous, we're probably going to say something, right? Even if they don't listen to us. Suzanne and I were talking about that dynamic earlier. What happens when a parent tries to say something to their own child and their own child blows them off? Of course they do. You're the parent. My kids did it for me, right? I've been doing prevention since long before my kids were born, and they just don't want to hear it from their own parents. But my kids' friends will listen to me, right? When I say something to them, they go, "Wow, really? I didn't know that." Yeah, I know, because your parents aren't in prevention. My kid knows that. He just chooses not to act on it, right? Because I'm the parent. So wringing your hands and just putting your head in the sand and hiding, that doesn't work. What does work? Educate yourself. Look at stuff like we talked about today. Check out some of the videos that are out there on why cannabis is bad for you, why it shouldn't be there. Try to understand the risks. And simultaneously, don't buy into the reefer madness. There was a great comedy film that came out that wasn't a comedy film at the time, in the 1950s, I think, maybe might have been 1940s, called Reefer Madness. And again, it was the government's attempt to say, hey, y'all can't be smoking weed. But to them, it had a lot of racial undertones. Every person who smokes reefer becomes a rapist or a jazz musician, which at the time was just one of the worst things you could be, because that implied you were either Black or Mexican, and neither one of them were acceptable to the U.S. government in the 40s and 50s. So don't buy into the reefer madness, right? If a kid smokes a joint, it's probably not going to kill him the first time. And we need to kind of understand that, and we need to treat it as such. Yes, there's risks. No, we don't want you doing it. Yeah, we think it's a bad idea, but we don't want to get so overblown with it and tell such fantastic stories and terrible stories that we lose our credibility. Speak up. Your voice is important. Again, I don't care who you are. I don't care if you own the hardware store, or you're a firefighter, or you bake bread at the local bakery. I don't care. Your voice is important. You're an adult. Somebody listens to you, and someone looks up to you, and someone believes what you say. And if it's not your own kids, well, join the club. None of our kids listen to us on a consistent basis, but I know my kids' friends do, and they know when they have a question about weed. They're all in their 20s. They're grown adults. They're doing their own thing. But I've had them come up and say, hey, I heard this. Is this true? Like, a lot about weed. Is this true? And 9 times out of 10, the answer is, yeah, that's true. Our health department put together some great radio PSAs. And, some of the friends were like, hey, I heard this thing on the radio that the health department did. I don't believe it. Is it true? Yeah, there's research. I can actually send you the research to your phone that you can read, or you can just trust me that, yeah, what they said is true. Talk to your policymakers. I don't care if they're people at your own business. I don't care if they're school board members, city council, state reps, national reps, Congress people, mayors, superintendents, whoever your policymakers are, wherever you have some influence, talk to them. Tell them what you're concerned about. Tell them what things you're worried about. Tell them about the things that you don't want to see happen. Talk to your enforcers. Talk to the law enforcement people, right? Talk to the people at school who are in charge of enforcing things. Don't be self-righteous, okay? And by that, I mean, don't get on your high horse and say, well, I don't smoke weed, therefore nobody should. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. People are going to do what people are going to do. Don't get hung up in yourself. This isn't about me. This isn't about Ken Dail. This isn't about what I do and what I don't do. This is about facts and research. And if you choose to smoke weed, you're no better or worse than I am. Right? You're just no better or worse than I am. You're a human being. You deserve a certain level of dignity and respect, just like I do. And the minute that I start thinking that I'm all that just because I don't smoke weed, somebody's going to come along and knock me off my high horse. And that's what should happen. So don't be self-righteous about it. Support your friends and loved ones. And that's where this leads me to this slide. And this could be touchy for some of y'all, right? Because some of you know who this person is, but you don't know it yet. David, this happened in your backyard in Traverse City. Right. This is DJ, right? This is the guy that went into Walmart and stabbed 11 people. Okay. The right is his mugshot. That's him in elementary school. Right. So I want each of you, if you have a Facebook account, search for the word Pellston. You all know where Pellston is. It's that little town up in Northwest Michigan. I used to work in Charlevoix. I used to do presentations in the schools in Pellston, right? Not the same time that DJ was there, but DJ was a kid of the 90s. And there's a whole story about there's a woman that knew him when he was a kid at Pellston and what happened to him, right? He smoked weed with his friends, and some pretty egregious things happened. All right. And it affected his mental health. And he was institutionalized for a while. He was getting the help that he needed for a while, and then he wasn't. And then he showed up on everybody's TV screen as the guy that was pointing a gun at him, screaming, "Put the knife down, put the knife down." That's DJ, right? Small town kid from Pellston who's now in the national news because he stabbed 11 people at Walmart. He's going to go to jail, and he should. He stabbed people. It's a violent crime. You can't do that in the United States without somebody eventually without law enforcement doing what they need to do, and without the courts doing what they need to do. So DJ does need to go to jail. However, again, if you Google Pellston and see the woman, there was a woman that was a friend of his that tells his whole story, what happened. And it's tragic, man. It sucks. I have a hard time talking about it. And I don't even live up there, and I don't know the kid, but I know kids just like him, right, that have gone through some just terrible, terrible stuff, who do some terrible, terrible stuff. So before we decide to throw the book at him, and they're going to throw the book at him, before we do that, let's try to get his backstory a little bit, and let's try to find out what happened. And this is why we're trying to prevent underage cannabis use, right? We don't want to see people who are that cute kid on the left side of the screen turn into a mugshot for almost killing people in a Walmart with a knife. It's tragic, and it doesn't have to happen. Here's some resources you can look at. Again, Suzanne has all the slides, so she can send these to you, but some of these are, weekly or daily emails. MYCAEA is us. That's our website. And that's my contact information, should you want to get a hold of me for anything. So we got almost just a little less than 10 minutes. Do we have any questions, comments, other things you want to know about? Where are you at after hearing all this?
Donna?
Yeah, Ken, got a couple questions. One is, do you have any research articles that really show research on the connection between adolescent use of cannabis and severe mental illness like schizophrenia or bipolar?
Yep. Suzanne will send the slides out. At the bottom of those pages that talked about mental illness, there's a link to the article, and the articles will link to the original research. So yeah, take a look there.
All right, and then do you have any information on there was a person in Cadillac recently that he was an adult, but he had used marijuana daily for years and years, and then he decided to just totally quit using marijuana and ended up psychotic, hospitalized, depressed, and ended up taking his own life. Is there a connection between withdrawals from cannabis and causing more severe mental health even when you're an adult?
That's not something that I've looked into or people have sent me a lot of articles on, but I'm willing to bet if it's a phenomenon for more than one person, it's been studied. Probably articles out there. I would say even some of the links to the research, if you look within some of those peer-reviewed journals, I'm willing to bet that, yeah, there's going to be some information about withdrawal and the kind of havoc that wreaks on people's, not only their physical illnesses, but their mental illness.
And I do have a comment about the Brad that did the Walmart stabbing. I think too, not only it's the cannabis use, but it's such a failure of our mental health system. And I've been reading a lot of comments on Facebook, and people like, oh, he needs to be shot, he needs to be hung, he's a terrible person, and it just increases that stigma regarding people with mental illness. But it's the untreated mental illness, and the root cause is our system lets people go untreated. They don't involve the family. They let people out of the hospital and don't tell the family where the person is. It's something's got to change with our mental health system. And this poor guy is being,
Yeah. And he, and again, I don't want to for a minute excuse the behavior, even with the
right.
mental illness, et cetera, et cetera. He's going to go to jail. There's no question he's going to go to jail. And I'm also aware that like this happened in Traverse City. Some of you may very well know some of the people that were stabbed and have been the victims. So part of me was like, man, do I even bring this up? Because it can be traumatizing just talking about it. If you know some of the victims. And we don't want to forget the victims because they're also victims, like you said, Donna, of kind of our failure with mental illness and mental health. I mean, so if a person goes off the deep end and walks into Walmart with a gun instead of a knife, intending to do harm and kills people, is that not also a fallout of a mental health system that's failing people? And I think it absolutely is. But the minute you say that, you run that risk of people saying, "Oh, so you're excusing their behavior?" No,
I'm not excusing,
they need to
but
go to jail. But I wish they would have got mental health assistance because they sure as heck aren't going to get it in jail.
yeah. And I had heard that he had been in trouble and incarcerated other times, and I think that's where we send people with mental illness to prison, which does not help their mental illness when they should be hospitalized and treated, and then maybe they could recover, because you can recover with mental illness if you are on your medications and stay on your medications and you're
Yeah.
monitored.
I'm hopeful. One of the people that actually reposted, there was a woman I had mentioned from Pellston who did the original post that said, "This is who DJ was in elementary school, and here's what happened." One of the people who reposted that is one of our state representatives. So I'm hopeful that one of our state representatives who already cares about the issue might see this, and it might be a catalyst for them to say, "Okay, like we didn't lose any lives this time. At least the last time I checked, we hadn't lost any lives. All of the people who were attacked have in fact survived thus far. But we didn't lose any lives this time. What happens, even if his outburst was a reactionary one? Okay, even if he didn't go into that store planning to stab people, if he was just there shopping and something happened and he reacted and stabbed people, what if he had a gun in his pocket instead of a pocket knife? What if he picked up a machete off one of the shelves? I mean, if you haven't seen it, it's literally a pocket knife that he was stabbing people with. There are implements of destruction in the Walmart that are much worse than the pocket knife he had. So what if he has a reaction and he's standing in the sporting goods aisle, right? Oh boy, it's the mental illness. It's the mental illness. In this case, I think we were, I hate to say fortunate because people got hurt and people are in the hospital, but we're fortunate that he had a little pocket knife in his pocket and not a loaded gun or something worse. But the issue comes back to the mental illness and the untreated mental illness and in my opinion, the failures of the system to be able to treat him and help him and things like that. So, and some of that, is why some of those pointers that I give, like we can't be self-righteous about this. It's not a moral failing. We have a system that's not serving as well as it can, as well as it could, for as much as we're paying in taxes. And I'm a firm believer in paying lots of taxes for good services. As much as we're paying in taxes, we expect more. So, do you have a question, David, or you check it out? Okay,
so
sure.
Yeah, we're nearing the end, and I thought we wanted to talk a little bit about what a coalition like ours could do with some funding to help do prevention measures regarding marijuana. What are the top two or three things we could be doing?
I think if we go back to that list, educate the adults, I believe, educate the adults in your community, be role models for the young people in your community, find the other role models among the young people in your community, safe in Northern Michigan I'm sorry, the group out of Gaylord, Rise out of Gaylord. They've done a pretty good job of finding the young people in the community who can be role models to younger kids. They found the high school students who can be role models for middle school and elementary school, and they've promoted those high school kids that are making healthy decisions, making wise decisions, and they've helped them teach their younger peers. And then billboards. I mean, the billboards that you guys did, I think were fantastic. The pictures of the kids from the community that people are going to look up and go, hey, that's Billy. Hey, that's Sue. I know those kids. I think that's fantastic. But then also, as much as you can do, I don't know how many retailers you have right there in the community, but I'm not opposed to walking into the cannabis stores and saying, hey, we don't want to see young people using this product. How can we be partnering with you to send healthy messages and to reduce access? Because it's not just access, right? Most kids cannot get weed from a weed store. It's almost impossible for them to even get in the door. But that weed store can do some promotions that make weed look pretty friendly and pretty happy to young people, right? There was a place in Bay City that had one of those giant Adirondack chairs that you can set in and get your picture taken in. Well, the whole back of the Adirondack chair was a giant pot leaf sitting out front of their cannabis retailer. And I thought, boy, what a great picture. Pile the kids on the Adirondack chair and take the picture and then go, oh, that's a pot leaf on that chair. Son of a gun. So working with your retailers even to say, not only do we want kids not to get it from you, but we want to work with you to not send pro cannabis messages that our 15 and 16-year-olds are going to digest.
And what about locking it up?
I absolutely think locking it up. We have a bunch of lock boxes. You can get Moog funds. If you're not familiar with that, just Google Moog, MOOG, I think it is, through the cannabis retailers. No, that's not it. Cannabis Regulatory Agency makes the funds available to all the counties based on how many individual medical licenses you have, medical cannabis licenses you have. And those funds can be used through the health department, through community mental health. If you have a nonprofit agency, you said you're with Catholic Human Services. Is that right, Suzanne?
Human Services. And we do have lock bags that we've been handing out to the parents.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a big proponent of those. I think they're a great idea. And that's another place where you can partner with the retailers, because sometimes people won't come to your event and ask for a bag because they don't want to look around and go, who's watching me admit that I use cannabis? But if they're going in the cannabis retailers anyway, okay, can we give them a dozen bags and say, hey, strike up a conversation with the people that that have little kids and say, would you be interested in a bag to lock your weed up when you get home? Because none of us want to see a 5-year-old ingest a handful of edibles and end up in the ER. Nobody does. So a free bag is like, heck yeah, great.
Yeah, and ours are pretty nice bags. We actually, one of our local Christians is handing them out to parents. We gave them to our middle school and both high schools, and they are offering them to parents, especially when their kids get in trouble for it, because one of our surveys that we did, they're getting it from the parents, not willingly necessarily, but if the parents keep it locked up, I'm not going into the middle school to teach classes. So yeah, definitely. Is there any other questions?
Last question. Smoking in public, is that legal? Like if somebody's walking down the street, I mean, you smell it everywhere all the time.
Yes.
And I'm thinking, is that illegal to do that?
Yeah, smoking weed in public? No, it's not supposed to be done out on public streets. It needs to be done in kind of in enclosed areas, but law enforcement in a lot of cases won't touch it because the fines are too small. It's too much of a convoluted issue. It's the prosecutor will or won't, the judge will or won't. So it's a big issue, but start with your law enforcement and say, hey, if I just see somebody sitting in the park smoking a joint, should I call you guys? And if they say no, say, okay, why not? Are they not breaking the law? Is it that you don't want to, really, what is it? And law enforcement will tell you, they'll say, oh, the judges won't touch it. Great. Let's start calling our judges. Hey, if somebody's breaking the law, what's the standard here? Why is this an allowable offense in our community? So.
Well, Ken, good seeing you. I'll see you again next time.
Yeah. Great. Thanks. And thanks, Suzanne, for having us present today.
Looking forward to that pizza and Dr. Pepper.
Yeah. Text me your address. I'll send it.
All right. See ya.
Yeah.
Our next Coffee with the Coalition forum will be held on Tuesday, September 30th at 9 a.m. and the speaker and topic will be determined. So